Okay, hello everyone. Victor Momo from Excel Moments. I got a question from a subscriber on some product and dynamic arrays, and well, why doesn't work? With spilled arrays and maybe possible workarounds. And that's what I want to show in this video, right? So, simple question. First one is really here we have a table, okay, not an Excel table, but here a list of salesmen, date some transactions took place, and the amounts, right? So now here you've just extracted a list of unique salesmen, okay, right? And then here you want to find out, okay, how much did each person sell? So of course that total should sum up to your total here. But when you try to use it with the spilled list of salesmen, that doesn't work. That's the F3 hash here. So this is your regular, sum product. Okay, so that doesn't work. I'll say two things. First of all, one, I make the case that with dynamic arrays and Office 365, there doesn't really seem to be a big case for some product as it's we used to have previously, because now some works with arrays without needing to press Control Shift Enter. So looks like for most cases where some products can work, some would be, a good replacement. I'm speaking in the context of Excel 365 and dynamic arrays. Okay, so the second thing is, why doesn't it work? And I think it's very simple and obvious. When you look at it, for the salesmen here, you have a list here which goes from B3 to B103. That's 101 names, right? And now you're comparing those 101 names with, the unique list here, which is 6 names, okay? So at the end of the day, it's going to do an element by element comparison. It's going to compare the first 6, and then it runs out of elements on the second side. It has 95 left on the first. It doesn't have any element to compare with on the second. And there lies, the problem, because you have a mismatch in terms of the dimensions of the arrays. But what you're really trying to tell Excel to do is you want it to compare these 101 names with David first. You want it to compare these 101 names with John, these 101 names with Jose. So it's really to find a way to tell Excel that you want to do this, comparison, I would say row by row on this unique list of elements, okay? Or element by element as the case may be. That's really what you need to do to get it to work. And I said it row by row, just to give you an indication of where I'm headed. This is where, for example, the Lambda and Lambda helper functions come in handy. You can use by row. The map function would also work, but I think the by row would be, more intuitive for most people because it kind of makes sense. You want to do this comparison by row. So I think in this context, it will be more applicable. But trust me, the map would work exactly the same. So all we are doing is we are repeating the same calculation, but we are telling Excel, do this row by row. So Excel is going to compare those 101 names with each element, but it's going to do this, one after the other and return the results of each of those comparisons by row. That's what you're saying it should do, and that's what it's going to do. So let me repeat, this sum product using the by row construct. Okay, so I start off with the by row Lambda helper function. The first thing is the array. Okay, so I would give it this array here, which is the unique list of names, right? I want it to loop, element by element or row by row through this. So now that's the first thing. We've given it the array. The function, you call up your Lambda here. The Lambda needs two things in this case: a parameter, a variable, and then the calculation. So the parameter could be anything. So I typically would use X. What you are saying here is X represents each element of this array. Okay, the F3 hash. So what it means is that X will represent David, then when it's done, it will represent John, then it will represent Jose, Mario, and so on. So that's what you are really saying. So X is every element of the array, or X is every row in that array. Okay, right. So now that you've chosen your parameter or variable, you're now going to the calculation. So the calculation is the sum product part, okay, which you are doing the same sum product. Okay, I'm sticking with sum product just because it was a sum product question. I could easily use sum here. I typically do my sum products by using, a multiplication sign in there, just to avoid doing the minus minus, double unary, zero plus and all that. So I know the first thing is this. I want to compare the salesmen here. So this entire list, after doing this, I can do control backspace. I want to test if this is equal to, first of all, equals to David. Then next, if it's equals to John. But don't forget that you've already declared a variable X, where X will represent each of those salesmen. So you can just compare these to be equals to X, right? Okay. So it's going to do this row by row. So once you've done this, the next thing is you want to multiply that, because this will give you a Boolean true or false. You then multiply that by the amounts. Okay, so anywhere it is false, obviously that calculation results in 0. The trues will give you the amounts, and that's really how it works. Okay, so Control Shift down, Control backspace, you close the bracket. So now we can close the sum product, we can close the lambda now, we can close the by row, right? And then we pull that in, and that's the result. Now the beautiful thing is that it's not just sitting in one cell and dragging it down, which is what you could have achieved with the sum product. If you chose only David, then you would have had to then double click to take it down. But this is really dynamic in the sense that if this list expands and you add a new name, then this automatically also expands. Let's just change maybe Rose to James or something, so that we have one more name there. Let's see what happens. Okay, so you see, the moment you added James, okay, James was added to the list, and its calculation was also done. Okay, so that's the beautiful thing about having dynamic arrays, because it spills and expands and contracts as the array contracts or expands. Okay, so that's the first one. So the simple workaround is really to use the by row, and like I said, you could easily have used the map function. Same idea. Okay, it's just doing an element by element comparison. Nothing, as in it's changing in there. Okay, so that's that. Now let's look at the second one. The second one is a little more intricate, more interesting, maybe for me personally. So in this case, you have it's like a cross tabulation, right? So you have this same unique list of salesmen here. Now you also have, some dates here. Okay, these were not my own formulas, but it's okay. I think I can figure that out. So these are like unique end of months. Okay, so like the end of months that you have in here, all right, it just gives you a unique list from there, instead of listing all the end of months one after the other. So what you want to know now is how much did David sell on this last day, how much did maybe say John sell on the last day of February, that will be here, and so on. Okay, so essentially we are trying to fill up this part, right? So that's really where our result is going to sit. Okay, so now looking at this is 6 salesmen and 1 2 3 4, I think 7 dates. So like a 6 by 7 array, right? And you want to have it in such a way that the formula is written in one cell, and it can then, if you may, as in spill into the other 41 cells, okay, into the other columns and rows in this array. So when I think of that in my own mind, I think of the MAKEARRAY lambda helper function, because the MAKEARRAY can create an array, okay, of multi-row, multi-column array. So I'm thinking, okay, that may work. It may now be tricky how to get it work, but I know that should at least give me, what it is I want. So I'll start off using the MAKEARRAY function. The MAKEARRAY function needs 2 variables, first of all, the rows and the columns. So it's the number of rows and the number of columns. So the number of rows here, of course, is the number of salesmen, right? So instead of hard coding that as 6, I can just do a count A and say count the number of elements you have here. Okay, that's the first thing. So once it counts, it would get 6, right? So it knows that, but I'd rather use the count. The number of columns is really also doing a count A, and this time I'm going, for the dates, right? Okay, so I close that. So those are the 2 things I need. So that will give me 6 and that will give me 7. So essentially it now knows the array to create. Okay, and in creating them, it's going to be going element by element. So this first box here, of course, would be row 1, column 1. This next box here will be row 1, column 2. Next one, row 1, column 3, and so on. And that's how it keeps going. All right. So now we've defined the number of rows and columns. Can go into the lambda portion of this. Right. So now the lambda, first of all, of course, needs 2 parameters to start with. One parameter, which I would think of, iterating through the rows, and then the other one as iterating through the columns. Okay. So that's the way I want to think about it. I'm not saying that's how it is. So I can mention that to be, R and, C. So what it means here is that R is going to be from 1 to 6. C is going to be from 1 to 7. Okay, that's how it's going to work. Right. So now after you've defined R and C, you now need to define the calculation. So the calculation is really where we do the sum product. Okay, but the sum product must factor in, the R and the C. Okay, to make this make sense. So now we go into the sum product. Now, what's the first thing we want to do in the sum product? The first thing is we want to test from all these salesmen. We want to test if, they are equal to, the particular salesman we are interested in. In this case, the first one would be David. The second one would be John. We can't hard code any of them, but we know that R represents the rows. So if I say R equals to 1, I know that's David. R equals to 2, John, and so on. So all I need to do is to find a way, to give it the rth element from here. If I can do that, Excel figures what it needs out. So sum product. So the first thing is take, the salesman, do this, control backspace, and test if this is equal to the rth element from that list. You can use the index function to pick that up. So I can say index, and then I select the names, right? And I say, give me the rth element, meaning that as it iterates, it will do R as 1, which will be David, R as 2, John, and so on. Okay, so this is going to test for me, and it's going to test, of course, row by row, right? Now, that's the first part. So once it does that, I want to test the second part. The second part I want to test is the dates. I want to see if the dates here, okay, I can do control backspace again, is also equal to, I need to check through all these dates and also get, the seat. That C is my variable for, iterating, so to say, through the columns. So I would do, index, okay, and then I give it all the dates right here, and I give it C, so that as it goes from column to column, it takes C as 1, it takes C as 2, and so on. So, okay, right, that's that in terms of the condition. So now it knows which salesman, which date, and then what does it need? It needs the amount finally. That's the last thing you would do. This is like a regular sum product, right? Okay. So this is like a regular sum product. The only thing here is just the infusion of, the R and the C. You need to compare to be sure that the salesman is the salesman you're interested in, the date is the date you're interested in. And then if that gives both, true of them, true, then multiply that by the amount. If it doesn't give true, then if it multiplies by the amount, it gives you a 0. So that way you can discriminate between what you want and what you don't want. So now we can close all of them here. So I think that should close. This closes the sum product. Now this closes the lambda. Then this closes the make array, and then we can press enter here and see. All right. And then we have an array of 6 rows by 7 columns, and that spills correctly. Let's see if this makes sense. Maybe we'll just try Mario 30th of April. Let's see that. Mario 30th of April. Okay, so filter on the salesman, and I think the value there is what? Okay, 6692. So Mario, all right, and then the date, we do 30th of April. So 2018, let's expand April. Here, that's 30th. Okay, I'll do okay. All right, and you see that value there, 6692. Okay, and so that's it. So now what I've done here is, in this case, I've used, the make array to create that array, right? Because I wanted it to sit in one cell. As you can see, the formula is sitting only here and then spills across. This way, if you also add, a new name, that's also going to expand. So what I mean is, as in I could add maybe James again, right? And if I also add a date or take out one of the dates, the same thing, it's going to happen. So that's how I, would solve it. So for both cases, I had to use, lambdas and lambda helper functions. But yes, if you used the sum if or the sum ifs, straight ahead, without needing all these complications. But yeah, there are a lot of times you need to see how these things work, and also, build your fluency and I would say competency with lambda functions. Okay, so that's how some product can work with dynamic arrays. I know it was a little long, but I needed to spend some time to explain it for the benefit of, not just the person who asked, but others who, may want to learn from it. So I hope you like this video. If you do, hit the like button. You can subscribe to the channel Excel Moments. For now, I'm out.